OCs, for those of you that don't know, that's the outreach coordinator. Just an overall encapsulation of how to think about this. An OC is a PCFO that doesn't handle money. That's pretty much the long and short of it. In fact, we would continue to call it the PCFO if it weren't for the fact that the name PCFO derives from its handling of money. So the only reason there's a name change is to handle the fact that it's exactly the same entity with pretty much the same responsibilities. You're just taking out that whole collection and disbursement of funds thing. And if it's not mentioned here, we'll talk about it later, certainly. The one thing that does for everybody is, since we're no longer handling funds, there's no requirement for it to be a 501c3 organization. Anybody can be an OC. A for-profit marketing firm, a humane society, a person working in their garage, whoever the LFCC decides can best serve that campaign can be an OC. So as we look at this list, we're basically going down the differences between the two. And this table bears out pretty much what I just said. In both cases, you apply to the LFCC. The LFCC makes its decision as to who is going to serve in this capacity. In assisting with the charity application receipts and completeness reviews, many campaigns have this role performed by the PCFO. I remember doing it. On the PCFO side, you open up the applications, you do the completeness review, and you pretty much do a large chunk for the campaign before the LFCC makes their determinations. PCFOs don't make decisions. They simply do the completeness review and interact with the charity to make sure that their application is in order when the LFCC comes along to take a look at it. That will no longer be necessary because there will be a centralized application website. It's going to be all web-based, and the completeness will be done through a combination of automated procedures and the Mark I eyeball looking at actual applications. When it comes to entering in of the data into the charity registry, again, not necessarily all automated. Preparing and distributing local marketing materials. Okay, so here's the meat of the OC's role. Most of the comments that we received during the public comment period dealt with this concept of local touch. And, regionalizing the campaign, local touch is going away, OPM hates the local touch, that kind of thing. If anything, it's the direct opposite, because what's happening now is we're allowing these organizations to focus on what they have traditionally done best. Getting into the campaign, getting into the workforce, and training them on how to do fundraising through workplace giving. That is what PCFOs are meant to do, and that is where many of them do the most benefit for the campaign. So when it comes to preparing and distributing local marketing materials, you will continue to do that. When it comes to arranging CFC events and fundraisers, we've had this conversation a lot, we'll continue to have it. The fundraiser part of it is going away. So I have an opportunity now to clarify something that was said both on a phone call a week or so ago and yesterday on the floor. There was a question about events and fundraisers and will we continue to do them, and it was understood that I said essentially yes, you could do them. I'm sorry if I was totally misunderstood. I said two things. Your events have to have an educational bent. That is why we're leaning toward charity fairs and away from bake sales. There's several reasons for that. One is, from the macro view, the campaign makes very, very little in fundraising events. Those bake sales do not I don't care what it looks like to you, when you look at it from the macro level, do not make any money. Secondly, this is, as Keith pointed out yesterday, an employee benefit program. This is not a fundraising program. Our primary beneficiaries are federal employees, not charities. We serve the federal employee. That being said, payroll deduction has a primacy of place, and that is the benefit that is being served. All those cash running around, getting lost in bags, left in desks when somebody PCSs, that's not part of the benefit. So those events, those fundraising events, will be scrapped, and events that revolve around education and educating the donor about their charities and their choices, that's where emphasis will be given. The other thing that I said was, okay, so you can't, you have to have an educational bent, and you cannot have cash. Cash will not be handled by feds. It won't be thrown in a desk. It won't be, handled. There's risk involved. That's going away. Beyond that, I'm a big proponent of the fact that people need to, the OCs are creative, and they should be. And so if you fit within those parameters, there's no reason why you couldn't, come up with events that fit those two criteria and meet the need of awareness and education. Another huge benefit that PCFOs currently have that will go forward as OCs is the training of loan executives, agency coordinators, and key workers. This is where the rubber meets the road, okay? I believe, I understand, Cynthia, you raise a good point. Sometimes those key workers, those coordinators, they're the lowest person on the totem pole. They're the newest person to the office. They're not necessarily, people love to say voluntold. These are not necessarily the people that want to be doing this job. And so you get out of the campaign what you put into it. Most people know that I believe that management level is where the education needs to start, because the campaign does not get the support it needs from the management in these agencies. They don't get the right people appointed. They're not getting the right time for the job. But where we can assist in making that happen, PCFOs currently, OCs in the future, really, really help by training those people in the ways and means of campaigning, fundraising, and the like. So that will continue. And the last three issues are all related to the taking up of pledges that the OC will not have anything to do with. So processing pledge forms, dispersing CFC funds to charities, and having to engage auditors to look at agreed upon procedures, all that is no longer necessary under the new plan, so those are not within the purview of the OC starting in 2016. So to sum up, I think I've said it several times, the OC does not handle funds in any way. Part of this is because now that it can be any organization, now that it doesn't have to be a 501c3, we have to maintain the donor's tax deductibility by ensuring that these organizations do not handle pledges in any form. It does not need to do agreed upon procedures, and the OC will not arrange fundraising events. We've been over that. And as we've stated, that no longer needs to be a 501c3. So some of the questions that came up most frequently: can the LFCC hire more than one OC? Absolutely. There's nothing in the regulations that says it can only be one. There is some need to take a look at the budget cap that will be allotted to each campaign to see what'll fit, but you're not limited to only one entity. Is the LFCC required to hire an OC? No. The LFCC can decide that it doesn't need one if they so choose. what happens if the OC spends more than the OPM budget cap? You're free to do that, but you won't be reimbursed for it. And will OPM consider the variances in the cost of doing business in different zones? Yes, absolutely. We're currently looking at that. We have several different models looking at the data. We can basically tell which campaigns are most effectively spending their marketing dollar. We know roughly where the funds are going to what activities, what marketing activities, and the like. And all of this is being considered. It was considered in the drawing of the lines for the proposed boundaries. So yeah, we are definitely looking at all that data, and we'll continue to do so. So at this time, are there any additional questions solely dealing with outreach coordinators?
Yes, solely with outreach coordinators.
Yes, you were at the mic first, sir.
Vince McConey, NCA. So 2 questions. The way that we operated with PCFOs is we had an MOA. GAO reviewed on several occasions when there were protests to the selection of the PCFO and determined that the rules of procurement didn't apply because you were using a member organization within a tight-knit community where the regulations were very specific. Now, I may have missed something, but as you describe the recruitment for the OC, this to me is sounding like a procurement process. Right. And if it is a procurement process, then we got to get rolling, kids, because we're not going to be able to get this done by 16. And also, with every government bid, as you all well know, and many of my colleagues in the federal government go, we're going to have a line of protests on this no matter what we do, because this is going to be new, and we're going to need GAO to review when those protests come out and rule whether or not the rules apply. So you probably thought about this, but it would be very helpful to know 2 things. 1, that question, and 2, where the money's coming from for the OC, so that it's really clear to the stakeholders how much money we're playing with when we are going to do the recruitment process.
So, Vince, you raise a good point. We will probably discuss that a little further again in the LFCC breakout. But, yeah, you're right. We've been rolling since day one. And so you raise a good point. And 2, the money will come through, again, as the regulations say, through application fees.
So he alluded, my name is Catherine. I'm from the Greater SoCal CFC, soon to be half the state of California, which has 12% of the nation's federal employee population. So keep that in mind as you're coming up with our budget.
Hear, hear.
I have a couple of questions. One is to follow up on the contracting issue, as the LFCCs don't have that level of expertise in many cases. And in looking at the size of some of the new territories, and it's important to have the local touch, I was happy to see that you're looking at the cost variances based on zone, but also keep in mind traffic patterns. In Utah, the speed limit is 85 miles an hour because you can go 85 miles an hour, and we can go 30 miles in 2 hours in Southern California. So, and we don't have trains, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at the budget for some areas.
You want money for trains?
No, exactly. Build us a train so we can go do those CFC events. So that's what we need. And then, so thinking about the large geography and the transportation challenges, webinars is certainly a way to do this, but the LFCCs oftentimes don't have the capability, and even if we used an agency platform, a lot of other agencies can't get on that platform. So I know OPM uses like Adobe Connect. Is that going to be a resource that's going to be available to us and the OC coordinator to do these remote trainings to keep the transportation costs down? So that's something to think about. And then the other question I guess I had is we were thinking that incentives were going away. So am I correct in thinking that we will just be given a campaign budget and we can use that for OC? So if we want to spend more money on salaries, then we could eliminate incentives. Or if we wanted to spend more time on transportation, we could eliminate more money on transportation, we could eliminate incentives.
Yeah, we wanted to have that flexibility, have that flexibility. So, we didn't rope any we want to say what is available and what you can do. And then just like Congress, they give you a pot of money and then you figure out what you actually will be able to do. You know, I mean, it's no different than how we run our agencies now. However, the discretion is, again, decided within your LFCC spectrum. And everybody's spectrum is different because they bring different things to the table, whether it's postal, DHS, or Labor Department.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Darrell Lester, St. Louis. So as with the elimination of the cash and elimination of the bake sales, so I know for some organizations, the bake sale is the method to attract the employees to the venue, to get to the charity fairs, to learn about the charities. And I know that there was a comment that was made regarding that our OC should be capable enough to create fundraising or to create charitable information and charity fairs that create education pieces that will drive the employees to the charity fairs. And there's also a comment that maybe the right people are not in place in some areas to influence the employees to attend those charity fairs. Is there a plan from OPM to try to help influence and try to help get the right people in place so that you can have that attendance to go to those fairs? Because I've seen some fairs where if it were not for that carrot, whatever that we're selling this, we're having that, it would just be a bunch of agencies standing there looking at each other and saying, hi, what do you do? Oh, this is what we do. Great, have a good day, take care. So just curious if there's any plan to assist with getting the right people, as you say, in place to encourage that attendance.
Well, you're right, and I kind of look at, excuse me, and again, this may not be the corollary that makes the most sense, that OPM manages all employee benefits. And I'm hoping that we get some creative energy around how we do that. Now, OPM has done, the OPM directors have done, they write letters to the director of the agency, the department heads. I know this particular director has her own blog about CFC. You know, she got out the word personally on universal giving. So we're trying to extend as far as we can without playing in other departments' space. But at the same time, we're always open to hearing what other things we probably could or should be doing. With the centralized site, and I'll try to wrap this up. With the centralized site, I will be trying to work with our central communications office to try to come up with more branding, period. I know the foundation has done some, and we really appreciate the work that they're doing. But I want the responsibility to be back on OPM to try to figure out how we do better marketing, ads, you know, whatever we can do to make the experience, or at least the awareness, more broadly captured. We're looking at 18% participation. That means we're leaving 82% uninterested. So we've got to figure out a way to, you know, reinvent, re-energize the interest level. And so, yeah, some things need to happen. I don't have all the answers, but we definitely need to make something happen there.
Yes, good morning. I'm Sandy Morris from the Escarosa LFCC. My understanding from when I came away from the LFCC phone call we had recently with Marcus, if I'm misquoting you, please let me know. But my understanding is that OPM would be the final approval authority or the final sign-off authority if one of these regions or groups or whatever we're calling them, the area now, decides to hire an outreach coordinator. If there is a contracting action that results, that would be OPM's level of approval for that. And I'm just curious how that's supposed to work if each individual LFCC or you know, each individual region is supposed to do their own contracting. The Navy's contracting officer is not going to have OPM sign off on a contract that is basically put together and announced and solicited and everything else by the Navy. I don't see that happening. So I'm not I'm not sure if OPM's considered doing just a massive, something like an IDIQ nationwide, where you guys put out the solicitation in the government point of entry and allow multiple bids to come in and allow those regions to select from whatever contractors applied for that particular region.
Right, and in most cases, there are some authorities, and in a lot of cases, they're not. But in DOD, I know it's very different. So, and everything is different, Tony, I'm sorry, at DOD. But we are working with all those HR, his boss, and trying to come up with the right solution for that. And to Vince's point, we're moving exponentially to try to get that done. I'm sorry.
Could you back up a couple slides where it showed the OC today and the OC of 2016? I think it was like the second or third slide. Was that it? Okay. So looking at that, and I know everybody's different. Myself, this is what I do. 100% of my job is CFC related. And I know a lot of you work, say, for United Way, and 90% of your time could be spent on CFC. I know some of you also do a lot of other things within, say, United Way. So I look at this in January, February, March, April, May. Right now is currently, my time's dedicated to charity applications and hand-holding and whatnot. And then we do like the strategic plan and a couple things. This looks to me, is this considered like a seasonal job, part-time? I mean, our OC position, in a sense, we're really full-time, full force, July, August, September, ramping up for the campaign. But in January, or am I incorrect on that?
I think it's very much up to the LFCC how that works. Yes, it's been brought up in several calls that this could become very much a seasonal thing. However, given the size of a lot of campaigns, the LFCCs may need someone to be working on the campaign 100% of the time, as you say. It's ultimately going to come down to the needs of the LFCC and how they choose to do it. Since outreach is very much a part of it's entirely what the outreach coordinator does. I know we've had discussions about visibility in the workplace of CFC personnel and that kind of stuff and how it's all beneficial. The LFCCs could choose that they might need to spend that time year-round on the strategy that's going to be used during the campaign and the actual solicitation period. Other LFCCs may decide they don't need to do that. So it's going to be up to the LCC to decide how that's done.
But can you hold an educational event in February? You're not soliciting, you're just having a charity fair, open house to meet and greet.
Yes.
Can you do that throughout the year?
Yes.
And again, those are things that I think we want those creative ideas around. So, and the other thing is, understand that under the old zoning, there had been no way it could be full-time, because you had 150 some reasons. And I think under the zoning that we're looking at now, it's more likely a possibility it could be full-time. And the last thing I'll make on this point, this is just kind of a general covering. This is phase one. I mentioned yesterday that the phase two, if I'm building a highway, I'm building it for maximum capacity. The commission also said it wanted OPM to consider how it can get retirees into this mix. And so we're talking about right now 4 million federal employees active, including military. There's another 2.6 million and growing retirees that we have not tapped. So as we think of, and again, my daughter, think of building this thing out, we're building it out for the long term. So everything that we're trying to put in place, how we're going to attract retirees, younger donors, volunteerism, is all going to be sort of in the OC span, again, looking down the road. So I understand we're penetrating 18% now, but I'm trying to build out an infrastructure that's going to be more robust and allow a lot more funds to pass through eventually over time.
Lana Marotti from Northern New England. I've been doing basically the outreach coordinator responsibilities for 14 years. We currently cover 4 states. I think my biggest concern is right now I pick up the phone and provide customer support for 20 LFCC, 700 charities, 400 federal agencies. Anytime there's a pledge, how do I do it? Where does it go? Any of that stuff. That we've done the online charity. There was so many questions, so much hand-holding. I'm really concerned about where that support's going to go, because they're used to being able to call and get that immediate support and response to help them through.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Good morning. Ron Denson from the Pensacola and Destin area, Florida. Keith, Marcus, I want to kind of follow up from the first gentleman's comments, talking about the timeline. And I know, Keith, you said that that's going to be addressed at the LFCC function breakout. I'm asking y'all to consider sharing that information to give a better feeling to the PCFOs, a little bit understanding of that timeline process when you're looking at trying to solidify the zones after all these shifts might take place, identifying the LFCC leadership functions, who is really going to be instrumental in the lead of those zones, and when this outreach coordinator, RFP process and the contract process is going to take. Because I just sharing with you in a concern, as the PCFOs, who I hope the LFCCs have appreciation for the PCFOs' work, very instrumental in the success of the campaigns. Sure. If they're not comfortable in the future of understanding in the future, walking away from the conference, my fear is you're going to see this massive exit of your PCFOs. And your LFCC is going to be the deers in the headlight looking at OPM saying, what do we do? So that's a comment I wanted to share, but I do have two questions.
Thanks.
On the funding of the outreach coordinators, can you clarify how is that going to be done as these contracts start, getting created? Are the outreach coordinators expected to front the money like a PCFO does and they get reimbursement later in, or is it going to be, just some clarity on how that's supposed to be laid out? And then I've got a second question. I'll give you
I can't go into detail because it's still being developed, but the idea being that because of the fact that the outreach coordinator is now going to be paid out of these application fees or listing fees. As you know, we have 3 different buckets of fees where we can charge to the charities. We have applications, we have listing fees, we have distribution fees that we can charge them. Application and listing fees are paid up front. Most likely, the listing fees are that's basically covering the marketing. So those are paid up front. The bucket of money will be there up front. So therefore, you're not going to be paid it all up front. It's an OC. What happens is, ideally, the way we're looking at it, and it's not finalized yet, but then the OC would bill the LFCC monthly. The LFCC would approve the bill, send it to our office because we have the contract with the CCA who has the money. We would say, okay, this bill is good to go, and tell the CCA, go ahead and pay that OC their monthly payment.
So in a sense, it will be a reimbursement after expenses,
Well,
just not.
You're getting paid just like now. I work for 2 weeks, and then a week later I get my paycheck for working those 2 weeks. You will work and get paid just on your monthly whatever. That's how it is. Rather than you fronting the money.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pay for performance.
And that answer. The other question, just in this slide itself, and yesterday we were talking about the volunteer initiative pilot program, which I think is probably going to become another additional part. How is that fitting in this with the OC's responsibility? Is the OC going to be help facilitating any part of that? Because I think that also would help answer a little bit more information from Amy's question about our duration of time as well.
Yeah. The volunteer was just a bulletin board which was attracting or making available volunteer activities. Again, until we have that, activity involved there, we won't know, how many folks are interested, where are they sort of finding these opportunities, how many people are finding themselves with time to do these opportunities. So I can't say exactly in terms of time the OC's involvement in that, but I can say that a lot of volunteering activity, especially amongst younger employees, once they are interested in something, they tweet and they social media to death. So even though it may not be something that 50 hits are coming against that site, there could be a lot of information about, hey, I did this weekend, you should join it. And we're actually hoping that that's where the social media and the OC piece gets involved, and we can expand it that way. But we won't know from the voluntary bulletin board until, I guess it stood up in, a month or so, and how many people are interested and what marketing we do around it.
Hi, I'm Tom from Western South Dakota Combined Federal Campaign. Basically, our campaign is located at the foot of Mount Rushmore in that area of the country. I have 3 quick questions. The first question is, as I understand it, there's going to be a budget set for each zone to fund the OCs. So if somebody applies to be an OC, how are they going to know if they're the sole OC for that area and will get the entire budget, or a part of it, a third of it, a fourth of it, however many OCs the LFCC hires? And I guess initially we're still going to have paper forms and booklets. So that's going to have to come out of the OC's pocket and get reimbursed later. Is that correct?
It's part of the budget, but that doesn't mean it's part of the budget.
But that's going to be paid for by whoever applies to be OC.
Well, it really depends on the agreement and whatever that LFCC says, in my market area, this is what I need. So these are my requirements. And it may not be the same for Baltimore as it is for Mount Rushmore, you said, your area.
Correct.
So it really, if this area is more densely populated and they don't need to ship booklets, then they may decide they don't want to use their budget that way. But if another area, again, this is the local touch and feel, we want to make sure that there's flexibility for that LFCC to employ whatever it needs to do to reach out to its geography. And so that decision will be made there in terms of how they'll use their allocation of resources.
Okay, let me get on to the second question then. And that is, what if no OC applies? We have been PCFO for Western South Dakota for 23 years straight because nobody else has applied, even though we advertise in the paper. If there's no OC and our board president actually runs Mount Rushmore, she's not going to have any time to coordinate any kind of campaign.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, I think that, again, we'll be working very closely with the LFCCs. We're not leaving any organization out there to sort of fend for itself. But what we understand is that in some of the locations where there has been little turnover, I'll put it that way, a lot of organizations say, why would I apply? There's an incumbent. I mean, we get this in government all the time. And so the fact that we now have relaxed, if you will, the requirement for it to be a 501c3, there could be some new energy that gets initiated in the areas where people who already have marketing, or they want to get into the federal workspace, or they have an affinity for certain types of things. And we're believing that we're going to have a lot of that option there.
Okay, the final question is the timeline for OC applications. What do you envision that timeline would be? What specifications are going to be put out there so that they know what they're getting into?
Right. Yeah, we've got a little bit of a runway, not much, but we're still developing that. And we're going to get that timeline out to everybody.
So possibly this fall?
Possibly, but again, in context of everything else that we're trying to line up, I don't want to say that and then, well, you said, Keith, it was going to be X date. So it's still under development. We're still looking at the budget data to see exactly what those budgets will be. So I don't want to misrepresent a timeline, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Do you anticipate application deadlines to the financial agent is still going to be April 1st of next year?
Applications for charities,
Yes.
it will be before that.
Yeah, it'll be much earlier for 2016.
Yeah,
So it sounds like,
January, probably, February.
okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
But remember, the OC is not involved with applications from charities, so,
Correct.
so that's not connected with the OC contract.
Well, it's a corollary, but it's not, like I said, they're different runway patterns, so timeline-wise. Who wants to
All
go?
Ann Van Houten from the NCA LFCC. I am one of those old dog contracting officers, so as you're talking about these things, I've got a few comments that I hope you've already considered, but if not, you really need to know.
Okay.
By moving away from the 503C, you have increased the cost to the whole campaign. You have introduced whoever applies for these positions is now going to have to hire some pretty big lawyers. You have introduced both the upfront protests that will happen, and as you move along, you've now formalized the relationship between your LFCC or your local governance and whoever this provider is. You are going to get claims, and no, I am sorry, ma'am, it's not going to be like how you get paid. It's going to be how more similar to how a contractor gets paid. That is a very expensive, time-consuming process, and disputes occur. You all at OPM are going to have to keep a pretty large reserve to handle those disputes. And there's going to be issues on agency and direction that may cause a legitimate claim to come to the federal government that is over and above that budget. This change in the relationship, I hope you haven't underestimated the complexity, the cost, and one last comment, the time. Normally for these complex relationships, it takes 3 years, a year to develop those requirements, and then a year to go out and do the process for actually hiring, and you need a year in reserve to resolve those initial disputes, especially since this is a new construct. That puts us, the runway, we are now delayed, and our flight isn't taken off in 16, because we don't have those 3 years.
I appreciate that. So will you be in the LFCC session? Hold on. I'm sorry. So I said I appreciate that. Will you be in the LFCC session?
Yes, sir, I
Okay.
will. I am also a DHS employee, so I have a few other
Okay.
things that I'm handling at the same time, but yes, sir.
Of
I
course.
will help you whatever way I can.
And if you can't help us at that session, I'll be able to count on you when we get back to address those issues you raised, right?
I will.
Okay.
We have worked successfully with OPM's contracting office.
Okay.
But I've got both DOD and civilian experience.
Great.
So happy to help you set up whatever you need.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it. Demetrius?
Good morning, Demetrius Stevenson, Greater SoCal CFC, and with our Chief Advocate, Catherine Hansen, representing us as well. I'd like to, just a brief comment and question about the fourth item, preparing and distributing local marketing materials. And, you know, I heard loud and clear that you're not viewing this as a fundraising effort, but actually, in reality, that is what we do best, not preparing, distributing marketing material, but it's a fundraising. And what we do best, at least in our shop, is take information that's available to us that we are allowed to use and then use that to make sure the campaign's success. And really what I'm talking about is down to the unit level, number of employees, number of donors who gave, what charities that they supported, and the dollars amount that they gave to those charities. That's information that we have available and that we are allowed to use. We take that information down to the unit level and have conversations with the coordinators, the key workers, and at that level, we develop customized marketing materials that they will use that reflect the culture of their work site at that location. So this is, I think, to help LFCC make decisions how they might select an outreach coordinators. And then for those of us who've been serving that role, you know, we'll have to make some decisions, and there may be folks on the fence as to whether or not they want to participate and support the outreach coordinator. So to help us out, what information will we have available at our fingertips to help us out in the field to actually raise money and prepare those marketing materials at the unit level that's really much needed to keep the fundraising effort alive?
You'll have the same information that we typically provide. I mean, I assume you're talking about marketing data and stuff like that to devise materials for your marketing.
And reporting level data. So
Right.
what I hear you saying is sort of like if you have an online giving tool and you now know how many units have reported, how many folks have been solicited or gave, you have it at the unit level.
Demetrius, I think part of the issue is the terminology, I think, is what's bothering you. Now, we do, I mean, marketing in itself is used, I mean, to get people to participate, to purchase, and that's allowed. When we're saying fundraising, what we're saying is none of these cash check things like bake sales and things like that at these events. Marketing is, I mean, the whole point of marketing is to get somebody to participate, and so I think that's...
That's what I'm saying is that, you know, we have 80 Social Security offices.
Right, so you're looking at the tools.
Will I know
Right.
that office at 2430 Robertson Boulevard? Will I have their number of employees, their number of donors?
Right, and
Who
so what we're
those
saying-
donors, the charities that they selected, and how much money they gave to those charities, so that we can go back to them and report to them, this is what you did last year, this is where you need to, this is where we would encourage you to improve, and so forth and
Sure.
so on. And this is what we think, so that information will be available?
Right.
I'm concerned a little bit about some things you're saying, Demetrius, because some of that information is private information that's not supposed to be going back to the agencies, like who the donors supported and things like that. I'm a little concerned, but I mean, it's about...
Some of the things he prepares for our LFCC is, you know, we do executive visits to encourage increased participation with the CFC. So he gives us a one page of like a 3-year giving history, a comparison of like-size campaigns, and so people see whether they're underperforming, overperforming. And without that data that will now be owned by the CCA, LFCC can't do our job.
So at a very, very high level, there would be dashboard-like data available to everybody based on user roles, I guess you could say. You know, it is foreseen that you would have that data available and you would be able to view it, and both historical and real-time dashboard information, down to the unit level, but not this idea of, you know, so and so participated this year and they gave this much, and you know, not that. But
I'm
essentially what you're talking
I'm not talking about individual
Right,
names,
right.
but at the individual level, we know there were 50 donors.
Right.
3 of them supported the Red Cross, 4 of them supported Children's Charitable Alliance,
Right.
10 of them supported at $2,000 to the Earthshare, that type of information.
Right. If I can use this terminology, a OC role would have visibility of who, numbers-wise, who is at each location. You would have to know that so that you know who you're marketing to. And you would have historics, who at each location, numbers, not names, participated. So X number of people participated at this location for the past, I don't know, 5 years, whatever. And then there would be different levels of people would have different access to different data as they need it. So LFCC, they may have like a dashboard that says, today you are at this level as a campaign, and these entities have the same as many campaigns currently have at their fingertips.
And the difference is that all LFCCs don't get that now, because the PCFOs are not providing that level of data. In this environment, it will be more consistent. So, you know, there's a level of specificity and sophistication that is unequal amongst LFCCs and campaigns now. And so we're moving towards making it a little bit more level. So the things that you're talking about may not be something that this LFCC over here is getting, but OPM wants to build that ramp so that they get it as well.
If I could add to that, you know, one thing that we cannot currently do now that we get requests for all the time is how much did Postal Service give to the campaign overall during the course of the year? I don't know. I don't have any way to tell you that. You know, DHS, you know, at what level was the level of participation for DHS in 2013? Who knows that? You've got to call 151 people and sort it out and figure it out yourself. But now with one centralized collection and disbursement system, we would be able to crunch those numbers and know that.
I want to go back to education. I'm wondering if there's going to be a requirement, or I suggest that there be a requirement. I'm Linda Morris from the Coastal Carolina CFC, and I work for SPAWAR. But we have a lot of new professionals, college students that are co-ops and that type of nature in our work. And I'm wondering if there's going to be a regulation that possibly would state that when an employee is hired, a part of their training, they go through security training, they go through the financial systems, whatever their roles will be, and that type of thing, that if CFC could be a part of that educational indoctrination when they were employed to begin this educational process.
Well, one of the things that the commission raised when we were going through these, and all the commission ideas didn't make it to the final report because they were just too many, quite frankly. They were really good ideas, but they didn't bubble up to the level of the 24 that made it, was for OPM to at least initiate with the Chicos across the country to develop a pamphlet. This is a trifold that would be inserted in onboarding materials in the HR departments. And so Director Berry had me sit in on one of the Chico Council meetings that was held at OPM before the commission even wrote its report, and said, yes, we're going to early adopt this recommendation. And so I challenged the Chicos and sent them a trifold markup that was simply an information packet that each agency was supposed to insert just right next to their employee benefit health care information was CFC. Now, I don't have a way to police that. This is us, this is the team, you know. So now I can go back to our Chico director, who's a new executive director, and find out, you know, are they doing it? Do a touch point with them.
Yeah, I'm looking for, because I know I brought this up at our LFCC, and they're all the COs and directors of the agencies in the area. But it kind of goes in one ear and out the other when it comes to education. But if there was a document, you know, stating, we recommend that you include this, maybe even a 4-page slide presentation or something of that nature.
Yeah,
a
so
part of their indoctrination. That way they would look at it more seriously, I think.
What will also help, if you notice with the 2016 regs, when an employee is hired, no matter what time of the year, they will now be able to, with the implementation of those regs, they will be able to write that in there. So it will become part of their, because they will be given a chance to pledge, even if it's outside of the pledging season, they'll be given a chance to sign up right at the time of hiring. So that's one of the reasons this thing has gone out, and it's actually, that part can't be implemented until the regs go into place. But it's part of the new regs that they will be given the opportunity to pledge when they're hired.
Yeah, we understood that, and the commission recognized there was a deficit in that area. So we did what we could do without regulatory change, which was to go to the Chico councils and say, here's a pamphlet. You don't have to create one. Here it is, a high-resolution PDF file. Just print it. And then the regs now also, with that, allow that employee, when they onboard, whether it's in season or out of season, to start pledging immediately. So I think I'm getting the hook sign that we've got 3 questions queuing up. So I think we can take those 3, and then we need to stay on track so we have lunch on time.
Just one comment about your educational, you were just talking about Why are we doing paper pamphlets? Why is it not an online new employee training that they do, and so that they know, and then here's your link to your MyPay to start your CFC pledge? Even though the link's there for them to begin a pledge as a new employee, if they don't even know what CFC is, because they didn't get the pamphlet, how are they going to know?
We recommended that. But
Okay.
again, so, again, we can't force the Chicos or HR departments to,
We're moving away from paper.
move. Well, trust me, we sent them a high-resolution PDF and said you can just insert it, because I know some onboarding is all online,
Something.
but every agency's different.
Yeah.
So we're not being dictatorial, but we are recommending that they move away from the paper process and insert an online onboarding process that is more consistent with how these students coming out of college understand and process the information.
My question was, with the OC, my PCFO has already let our local LFCC, I'm Bev Arnold, Heart of Alabama CFC, that they are not interested in applying as an OC.
Okay.
So that leaves me as an individual still interested in being an OC, but my concern is the reimbursement process. Because if I have to order brochures and pledge forms and materials that are thousands of dollars, and then I'm going to be reimbursed with that, I have to front that up front as an individual or even as a small business, and I'm not for profit because I'm only getting reimbursed what I've actually spent, what incentive is it in doing that? And what incentive is it for a PCFO to continue to do that?
No, we understand, and again, that's why we're having this dialogue, so we understand what it is that you believe could be a prohibitor or an incentive to stay engaged. And again, we're taking all this information back, and so where things haven't been concretely decided, this is helping us inform how these things should be structured. And we certainly don't want to put any, and like I said at the outset of all my presentations, we appreciate and understand the work that you have done to contribute to this process. This is not an alienation, send you off to the frontier type of scenario.
Except the point is that this is coming up in 2016,
No,
and
I
my PCFO has no information
Gotcha.
about what it's going to look like. So instead of saying, well, let's just wait out and see what OPM tells us,
Right.
what the plan is, they're like, we're done. We
Gotcha.
don't want to have this relationship anymore. And so it's leaving a lot of us in that situation where they're not going to apply as an OC, and we don't even really understand what to tell them the incentive is for them to stay. So I'm supposed to go back next week and brief the CEO of the United Way on why he should stay as an OC, and I don't have that answer.
Well, Beverly, there was one statement that you made that the OC can only get reimbursed, that's under the current PCFO system.
But that's what you said we would be doing, is we would bill the
You would-
LFCC, they would approve it, and then you would get reimbursed.
That's how a normal contract works when you have a contract, so whatever is contracted now, you contract and you work into your contract, this is the cost of this is the cost, and you have that agreement, and then you say, okay, after this month, I've done this many hours or whatever, because if and then they say, okay, yes, it is, send the bill in and be paid. Just any contract is going to be paid that way, that the
Pay for
contractors always
performance.
have to send the bill in, and it has to be approved, saying, yes, they really did that work.
So it's not going to be reimbursed of actual expenses.
It's going to be based on the contractual agreement that's made between you and the LFCC as to what, how it works, so
As long as it stays within that budget.
within the
Right. 2 more questions. Either one.
Sheila O'Connor, New York City. I have one one of the things I'm getting from this is Keith, your primary goal here is really to increase the number of federal employees that are participating in this program. And it's something we've been struggling with in terms of participation for years. But one of my concerns is as I'm hearing about the role of the key worker and the coordinator, I train these folks on how to solicit pledges, how to fundraise. And a big part of that is the closure, okay? And that's, one of the struggles I had in training folks in how to use the online systems is to make sure they had immediate feedback so that they would know that that group of people that they were responsible for soliciting had made a decision, how they had pledged. So I'm a little concerned about how you're going to work out that disconnect of if they have to mail a paper pledge to some entity. How does the agency coordinator know how they are doing? A lot of our folks are very goal-oriented. They like to have a fundraising goal, and they like to know whether or not they met it. I have a number of agency directors that will actually put in the difference to make sure they make their goal. So those are some of the things that I think still needs to be worked out, because I feel like if your coordinators and key workers are completely disconnected from the actual pledge, what are we training them to do?
Do you want to take that? Well, I could take it. So you described a process that I understand, and so what I also understand is that over time we haven't got the value out of it from the participation perspective. So what I would like to, I guess, appeal to you all on is how can we do whatever you just described better? You know, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I never pretended to have all the. In fact, Director Barry didn't like my answer. He wanted me to go out and find out from people how we should do this, and that's what I did. And I'm still saying I need your ideas and feedback on how to best do this. Now, there's a way to do it and a best way to do it, and then an effective way of doing it. So I'm really just trying to understand from this conversation kind of what we've laid out at a high level, and then what your thoughts are on it. And we're going to tweak it to try to make it work to the best advantage of the federal employee and to help you all help us to build a better CFC program.
Good morning. Thanks for your time. Lieutenant Commander Joyce Bowler. I'm the LFCC member, Southampton Roads. So when I go back next week and I'm trying to brief the Admiral, who's the chair, I'm a little confused, only because when I was asking about, now Virginia is a zone, and asking who was going to be the chair, it was decided, well, that's really not important right now, but yet I'm told that the LFCC is the one that's going to be hiring the OC. So obviously that is important. We need to know who those chairs are right away. I'm by no means a contracting officer. I'm human resources. So I know that when you're dealing with contracts, it takes forever and a day in the Navy to get anything done. So I'm looking at my watch thinking, wow, we got a lot to do in 9 months. And then throughout what we've been talking about this morning, there's been some great questions asked, and it seems to be the answer has been, we're still in the works of that. We're still in the works of that. So I'm really concerned when I go back next week and I'm trying to brief these new changes that are going to take place in 9 months, that we're still in the works of that and we don't have a chair, but the LFCC is going to be hiring the OC, and we've got to do a contract to get that done.
Are you going to be in the next session too?
I am going to be in the next
Okay.
session.
I want to pick up starting with your question, if I can, because we ran out. So we're going
Okay.
to go right next door, and you're going to get back up to the mic, and we're
Okay.
going to continue this conversation.